This is not a marquee promoting Charles Bronson's movie of the 1970s. Rather, it's a sign congratulating Bernhard Goetz.
I think that stories that catch the attention of New York City are never really just about the actors who are involved.
For a period of time, I was a cold-blooded murderer.
Ultimately, this was just about race and crime in New York City.
This is not a hero. This is a shooter.
Nobody wanted to talk about anything other than Bernhard Goetz.
If this is America, the home of the brave, don't you think it's about time some of us start acting brave?
10-10 shots fired, City Hall building.
We need police right now.
All 5 boroughs are dying. This is crack city.
A real-life soap opera has kept New Yorkers glued to their TV sets.
It was an act of retribution in a city where muggings on the streets and in the subways are daily realities.
I was working that weekend when we heard about a shooting in the subway.
The shootings took place on a moving subway train in Lower Manhattan.
It really shocked the city.
4 men, 3 wielding sharpened screwdrivers, approached a lone man on a subway train demanding his money.
Guys allegedly asked him for $5, and he shoots him.
He pulled a revolver, went into a marksman's stance, and gunned them all down.
What struck me was he was prepared to do maximum damage to somebody.
2 of the teenagers are at Bellevue Hospital. The other 2, most seriously injured, are here at St. Vincent's, both in critical but stable condition.
The man told the conductor of the train, in his words, "They tried to rip me off." Then he jumped from the train and fled.
Some people identified with it because they really were tired of the crime in the city.
A 13-state alert went out for a tall, blonde suspect, but a large segment of the New York City public roundly applauded the gunman's actions.
Wow, this is, a skinny Charles Bronson.
Police Commissioner Benjamin Ward denounced press reports comparing the shootings to the movie Death Wish, in which Charles Bronson rides the subways attacking muggers.
This isn't Hollywood. This is real life, New York. And there is a criminal code, and he violated that.
From eyewitness accounts, police made this composite sketch. No suspects as yet.
On board the number 2 IRT train on this Christmas Day, the same train where the vigilante did his thing, the reaction was strongly in favor of taking the law into your own hands.
A vigilante is judge, jury, and executioner.
Call him a mad vigilante.
Back in the late 70s, when the city, New York City, was falling into the abyss, when there was anarchy in some neighborhoods and gangs ruled, people, by sheer necessity, had to become vigilantes because there was no security, no cameras. You were on your own.
How do New Yorkers feel about fighting back, especially down here in the subways? You think it's okay to carry a knife or gun to defend yourself?
Yes.
And
yes.
Will you?
Yeah, if I have to, I will.
People just felt unsafe going into the stations, riding the subway, coming out.
When they're out on the platform, they're like the turkey with the giblets and the gravy ready to be plucked on Thanksgiving.
There was a common perception that if you went down into the subways, you could pretty much bet that you were going to be robbed.
Oh, every day is D-Day down here. Yeah, every day.
It's like the Wild Wild West.
The number 4 train, the Muggers Express, the 2 train, the Beast, the D train for danger. I can go on and on.
I got mugged just 2 weeks ago myself. A guy put a gun to my head. If I had one, I would have used it.
It is a time in this city when fighting back makes headlines, when the word vigilante is synonymous to some with a brand of heroism.
Anybody who these little hoodlums try to accost, if they have any means to protect themselves, they should.
It does become this good and evil battle that's happening.
Police have circulated a sketch of the gunman and have established a telephone line for tips. But more than 1,500 people have called in to express support for the shooter.
I was mugged once on the subway, and I just perceive, let the guy go. I think it's great.
Universally lionized. I mean, everybody said, who is this guy?
Could the vigilante actually be an off-duty New York City policeman? That's what the brother of one of the victims thinks.
Come on, you gotta be a marksman or something. Only police officers or mafia can shoot like that.
In one sense, it makes no difference who the vigilante is. What really is significant is that thousands of New Yorkers are so fed up with punks and crime that they think the shootings are great.
He was right.
He was right.
He was right.
To do the shooting.
Yeah.
It was the talk of the town. Nobody talked about anything else.
An angry Mayor Koch said that the gunman, when caught, must suffer the consequences of his acts.
No one can, with impunity, take the law into their own hands and give instant justice. We will not permit it.
He turned himself in at Concord Police Headquarters and indicated to our on-duty watch commander that he was the person responsible.
When Bernhard Goetz jumped off of that number 2 train and ran into the darkness of that tunnel and then disappeared for a while, who knew he was up in New Hampshire?
The break in the case came today when Goetz walked into a police station in Concord, New Hampshire, and confessed.
When he emerged and we began to see him talking.
It's true. For a period of time, I was a cold-blooded murderer.
And that was just creepy. That was just creepy and scary to listen to. Even before we had any idea who he really was.
It's all very cold-blooded. It's just going to offend everyone.
This is the home of the man who police say has admitted to the subway shootings. Neighbors and workers were shocked and surprised that one of their own could be the vigilante. And what type of person is he like?
Very quiet, very to himself.
This guy was the consummate geek. He lived in his own little world.
They say he lived alone in this one-bedroom apartment.
He's very smart. He's an electronic engineer. He works for himself.
He didn't look like the kind of guy that would go ahead and shoot down 4 guys. I mean, that's probably the reason they picked on him.
So if I'm a thug, man, this is the Vic, as they call him in the streets, the perfect-looking victim.
He was thin, with glasses, nerdy.
If you had that certain look, that's it, man. You are a human piñata.
The suspect was apparently mugged in New York City in 1981.
He had been mugged at least once before.
It was right down near Delancey Street. He was catching a train. And the thugs threw him through the plate glass window to take his leather jacket. And then they were mad dogging him and talking trash at him as he was on the ground, and he felt completely impotent. I think that's when all of a sudden Bernhard Goetz said never again.
At Goetz's apartment building in Manhattan, there were many clues to the suspect's behavior. One acquaintance described him as obsessed with cleaning up the neighborhood.
Those who worked alongside Mr. Goetz say he was especially concerned about crime, drugs, and the appearances of the street.
That's Bernhard Goetz sentiment. That's where he's coming from. That's his mindset. He wasn't going to be a victim any longer.
It is a fight-back spirit that Bernhard Goetz allegedly took to the extreme.
No, this is not a marquee promoting Charles Bronson's movie of the 1970s. Rather, it's a sign congratulating Bernhard Goetz.
People felt empowered. Yeah, we all gotta do that. We all gotta fight. You know, people talking craziness.
Yeah, you have Dirty Harry, you have Death Wish, you have all these different revenge fantasies that are usually from a white male perspective anyway.
Both the fictional Charles Bronson narrative and the real Bernie Goetz case played on the same fear that black people were predatory and white people had to be really, really careful.
Everybody feels that he's not a criminal, he's not a vigilante, and he's not Death Wish. He's only Bernie Goetz, a decent citizen that just tried to defend himself.
The Reverend Al Sharpton, a black leader, had a different interpretation.
I think that this legitimizes white vigilantism.
Black people said, oh, here it is. This guy gets to shoot 4 blacks, and white people would cheer him on like he's some kind of hero.
This is not a hero. This is a shooter.
4 kid black thugs, hero that had enough, that was in the story. So I'm saying, what do you mean? I'm gonna kill you over $5, and we're gonna make him a hero, the vigilante, the man fighting crime.
And actually, white people are like, yeah, don't you understand? We're getting victimized all the time.
What would you have done? That's all I'm saying.
What would you have done?
I'd have defended myself.
I think that it makes black young people the sitting ducks of white paranoia.
You have black and brown New Yorkers who are saying, you know, we get a bad rap every time. You know, we can't just ride the train.
Do you feel now that young blacks will be so-called sitting ducks on the subways?
I think this is a racist society, and I think black people get treated one way and white people get treated another.
And now pitting again whites versus blacks. Because who shows up? Al Sharpton.
Al Sharpton was provocative.
I do not want the city to give license to white vigilantes to shoot black kids that they suspect to be muggers on the subway.
He was aggressive. He was outspoken.
Because then we'll have to arm ourselves on both sides of New York, and we would have a second civil war in this city.
People say, oh, Al Sharpton just want media. That's exactly what I want. That's what people call me for. Nobody calls me to keep a secret. They call me to blow it up.
There were a lot of people who stood behind him saying, finally, we have someone who's saying what we're thinking.
Bernhard Goetz, the accused Death Wish gunman, apparently kept his pledge to make the $50,000 bail on his own, despite hundreds of offers of support.
The flood of nationwide interest has been reflected in these letters.
Here's one contains approximately 5 checks. Thank Brother Goetz.
What happens when otherwise liberal and progressive white people start to get really, really afraid of black people?
This case is really more about deterioration in society than it is about me.
There is always a fear when you live in these urban areas of absolute chaos and pandemonium breaking out.
And you can see what fear does. It lionizes someone like Bernhard Goetz.
He represents white fear. They are after us. It's us against them, and I have to protect us.
Vernon Young has never been a victim of crime, but that doesn't mean he is not fearful of being victimized. If you were in the same situation, would you do the same thing?
I would have, yes.
The Death Wish gunman, Bernhard Goetz, will eventually go to trial, but the controversy as to whether he is right or wrong is likely to go on for quite a while.
Many may not fault Goetz's contentions, though not agree with the shootings. But the question that confronts this crime-weary city is whether the proper protections can be provided by public policies instead of the barrel of a gun. A lot of people in this city are scared to death to walk the streets at night. What encouragement?
Baloney. Listen, I don't mind talking because you're a very good reporter. And when you say something like that, all you're doing is adding to irrational fear.
When Bernhard Goetz was on that train and shot all of those young men, that resonated with a lot of New Yorkers who were also fed up with not being protected.
Some saying that there is not a jury in New York that could possibly not side in favor of the vigilante.
If I was on a jury, I would have acquitted him. All right, you were being robbed, I would vote not to convict him.
A vigilante showing up every now and then will have a good, healthy reminder to some of the lawbreakers out there.
You're a lawyer?
I'm a lawyer.
One attorney's advice to Bernhard Goetz: stay silent, hire a good lawyer, then hope for a jury full of New York City subway riders.
If you were on the jury, how would you find him, innocent or guilty?
Innocent. Lean toward not guilty.
Probably not guilty.
If the jury was the entire population of the city of New York, there's a reasonably good chance the suspect would go free. But will the law, should the law, be in step with what the people think?
What the problem with that case was when they were on the ground, he pumped another shot and the kid being on the ground. That was defenseless.
Bernhard Goetz fired a 5th shot at one of the teenagers who allegedly harassed him. That, according to a police report filed in court today.
Particularly people of color were saying, well, did he shoot him because they were blacks?
He shouldn't shoot people down like that. That's not fair.
Was he afraid or was he a racist? So that's when people began to have their doubts.
I don't know if he's a racist or not, but I know his reaction is different than if they had been white.
Jimmy BRESLIN has been outspoken in his criticism of Goetz, saying in one column, he shot the 4 of them because they were black. Don't worry about it. Shot them bang, 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 2 in the back.
You think Goetz was right? You think he's a racist? You think he's crazy? You better believe there had to be a lot of heated conversations, both pro and con.
Will Bernhard Goetz take the stand and tell his side of the story?
From the prosecution's point of view, if they can't compel Goetz to testify, that's his decision.
Or will the videotapes and statements speak for themselves?
But if they have an interrogation, a tape that they think supports their theory, by all means, they're going to play that tape.
Oh, hey man, did you see that videotape? Guy acts like me, he ain't all that friendly to black people. Which, I gotta tell you, you look at some of those cuts.
I wanted to kill those guys. I wanted to maim those guys. I wanted to make them suffer in every way I could.
He shoots Troy Canty.
Boom.
He shoots James Ramseur.
Boom.
Barry Allen is trying to get out of the train at that point.
It seems as if he was trying to get through the steel wall of the subway car, but he couldn't. And I let him have it.
Boom! KB was on the ground, and this is the one that really caused all kinds of problems.
I went to him the second time, and I looked at him, and I said,
"You don't look so bad."
You don't look so bad. You don't look too bad. Here's another.
Here's another.
And he shot the fourth subject a second time.
Fired a shot point blank into his back.
Darrell KB remains paralyzed, in a coma, and in critical condition.
Darrell KB was clearly the most seriously injured and would be forever.
Look, if I had more bullets, I would have shot them all again and again.
I have no remorse. I did it and I'd do it again.
I could do anything. I could shoot 10 bullets into him if I had that many bullets.
My problem was I ran out of bullets, and I was gonna gouge one of the guy's eyes out with my keys afterwards.
Not even trying to in any way hide his intention. Proud of it.
How do you feel when you hear Goetz's version?
I feel that he's lying.
He is perhaps the most notorious of the young men shot by Bernhard Goetz, James Ramseur.
Those four boys, in denying the fact that they were trying to rob Bernhard Goetz, in turn admitted that they were headed to an arcade to rob it, armed with screwdrivers.
So a lot of people said, what, you're gonna make these guys out to be victims? They got what they deserve.
I really don't feel that terribly for the four.
They deserve what they got.
So the young men are automatically convicted, and he's automatically a hero.
When he shot me, I knew I was shot for no reason. There was nothing I could do.
Do you understand why Goetz may have felt he was being robbed?
With one of the young men, Goetz claims to have seen the gleam in his eye.
Yeah, I don't think he felt that he was being robbed. He snapped.
So I have to tell you, shooting people because of your perception of the gleam in their eye is what we call attempted murder.
Ramseur told me Goetz should go to prison, but believes the jury will not convict the subway gunman of the most serious charges against him.
I don't feel that he's going to be found guilty of the attempt murders, maybe lesser charges.
Why not?
Because from the way things look to me, it looked like, the trial has been set.
The social conditions at the time led toward, I don't care what he says, we gotta let him go.
I think the jurors went in recognizing the racial lines were divided.
There was a division there that hardened because of Bernie Goetz. You could just choose your side.
What do you think should happen to him?
I think he should go to jail now.
What do you think should happen?
Turn him loose.
There was a city ready to go up in smoke. Everyone was fixated on the Goetz verdict.
I'm Eric Shawn at the Bernhard Goetz trial.
Nobody wanted to talk about anything other than Bernhard Goetz.
Goetz, a former mugging victim, claiming he was justified for shooting in self-defense. A story Goetz's lawyers hope the jurors believe.
From the day they heard the first testimony, they were going to find this guy innocent unless something emerged to say this was like preemptive. He knew these people. This was revenge against them individually. Nothing like that ever emerged.
I believe it was clear to people who saw the macro, the big picture. Ultimately this was just about race and crime in New York City. All those things sort of played into the jury's deliberations.
As the subway gunman stood with his head bowed, he showed no trace of emotion. Goetz was found not guilty on the 4 counts of attempted murder and assault charges.
The verdict was not surprising.
Even then people were saying, can you imagine if this situation were reversed? If Bernie Goetz had been a black man, and there were 4 white teenagers.
He should get time, just like everybody else get time.
One of us, we done got time.
One of us, we would have got time.
The idea that that person wouldn't have been convicted of attempted murder is unfathomable.
I think that stories that catch the attention not just of New York City, but the nation, are never really just about the actors who are involved.
It's the same issues, the same arguments are being raised. So I think if a Bernie Goetz situation happened tomorrow, odds are you'd see the same break across New York City. Maybe not as extreme, but ultimately there would still be the same difference between black and white.
I think that if we had a Bernie Goetz situation, it would not automatically play out the same way. I think there'll still be challenges. Don't get me wrong. I think we are not where we need to be, but we're a lot further than we were.
No justice. No justice.
You have this ongoing conversation about whether or not African Americans got a fair shake, and whether or not on the other side, you were able to ride the subways without feeling like you were going to be victimized. At the foundation of that story is this black and white conflict. And the Bernhard Goetz case exemplified that.
As the jurors prepare to resume their normal lives, so too does the man whose fate they judged. I asked Bernhard Goetz if he has any message to the family of Daryl Cavey, his head bowed in thought.
His mother is in a way similar to the mother of any other crime victim, and I feel sorry for her. What can I say?